that's why I am not one of these people who thinks that gold is going to go to $10,000 an ounce, or we're going to replace all the money with $50,000 an ounce gold. Our target was basically the old highs, which was 1033 in 2008, March '08. We got very, very close to that. And as far as I'm concerned, the next move in gold is probably lower. But I don't think it's going to go down as hard or as fast as almost all the other commodities, because they were way overpriced in the run-up, and gold has been very conservative in its movements. While some of these other things went up 10 times in value, gold only went up 4 times. So I think it has a lot of resistance to the downside, very much like it really hasn't much free room on the upside. So if you were going to ask me what markets are the most exciting, gold would be in the bottom 5. And to me, if you want to make money, you want to be short the stock market.
Once gold does hit that target area, which I've seen the 680 number kicked around, are you guys still holding on to that number?
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable and probably conservative.
And once that target number, or we hit that target area, do you think it could stay that low for a fixed period of time, or do you think we could see a spike in gold?
I will say that I think as long as we're in this deflation, gold is not going to soar. And people who are in it are going to be somewhat disappointed, I think. And the real money is going to be made for people who've got the fortitude to sell market short, because the stock market is the most overvalued it's ever been in history, except for 2007 and 2000, depending on your various measures. In fact, on PE basis, it is the most overvalued it's ever been. So that's where the big money is. I also said in Conquer the Crash that after the deflation, we could be at risk of hyperinflation, because if the governments don't let go of their money monopoly and decide that they want to actually start up a printing press, we'll turn into Argentina or Zimbabwe or Germany in 1923. Those are possibilities, not really predictions. I'm not worried about that until we get past the valley. And getting past the valley is going to be the toughest thing that anybody's done in his financial life, because you're going to have to disbelieve all of the bulls who say, oh, we're bullish and the economy's recovering and we're back on track and you need to own stocks. And even 95% of the bears who are saying, we're going into hyperinflation, so you want to buy stocks and commodities and metals. And I think all of these people are going to, once again, suffer what we had in 2008 between now and the end of 2010.
Very interesting. Speaking of the stock market, I noticed in the Elliott Wave Theorist that you were posting a long-term nominal target of 400 for the market. In that target range, are you referring to the Dow or the S&P, and is that in dollars or gold? I mean, help me try to get there with the inflationary practices of the government. How could we possibly get that low?
The only way the Dow is going to get to that target, and that is a target that would occur under the Elliott Wave form that the market has created from the low in the late 1700s up to the peak here in the early 2000s. But the only way it can get there is if we have a deflation of the kind of magnitude to balance out the inflation that we've had from 1933 to last year. And I think we're going to get it. I think all of this, most of the inflation since the Fed was created is not new money created by the Fed. It's new IOUs created by the banking system. And even outside the banking system, in such things as collateralized debt obligations, CDOs, collateralized mortgages, collateralized credit card debt, and also derivatives, which they've traded privately among financial institutions. I do think that there is that kind of leverage or deleveraging that is about to occur. It's going to be the opposite of what we've all lived through for so many years. In fact, even people who are 75 years old don't know anything but inflation. So it's going to be a very, very different world.
Wow, that's amazing. Bob, I have two more questions. I'm here in Pittsburgh, PA, where the G20 summit is meeting and all the ensuing chaos. But I wondered if Elliott Wave had any thoughts about the theory of decoupling and the loss of the reserve currency status for the U.S. dollar.
When you say decoupling, do you mean the U.S. dollar from everyone's idea of reserves?
Yes.
Well, I don't think that any other fiat currency is really in a position to take over the role. what the world needs is a free market currency created by individuals and corporations, and as you and I know, that will end up being only one thing, and that's gold. And I think the future is something like what James Turk has created in gold money. That's the way banks ought to be run. If you want your money held safe, it's in gold form, and you can trade amongst your neighbors with grams of gold. That's the way it ought to be. But for the moment, we're stuck with these government-run money monopolies, and of course there's nothing behind any of them except promises to collect taxes and pay off. That's a terrible monetary system, but does anybody really think the euro is going to be a better reserve currency? I don't, and I don't think you can count on a small island of Japan creating the currency for the entire world, although I guess there is some history in Britain having done it. I think all the currencies in the world are in trouble, with some perhaps small exceptions such as Singapore dollar. I think the New Zealand dollar is pretty good on a relative basis, and of course the Swiss franc, but most of these are way too small to support having everyone in the world want to use it as a reserve. So I just don't see any alternatives. If you're a big investor with billions of dollars worth of stuff, I mean, are you going to really feel better because you moved it into euro-based IOUs? I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. Bob, my final question would be, what's your opinion in the way that any type of a public health care option would affect deflation versus inflation? It seems that there's a great deal of political pressure to get some type of a public option passed, even though recent polls show that the vast majority of Americans strongly oppose such an option. There's just a great deal of political pressure to get something passed. How would a bill like that getting passed affect our economy?
Oh, it would help ruin the economy. I just don't think it would have any effect on inflation. A lot of people think that government spending affects inflation, but it doesn't do that at all. They just take money out of people's savings, or they take it from lenders who would otherwise put it somewhere else, or they take it from taxpayers who otherwise would have spent the money on something more intelligent. So all the government ever does is throw money away and waste it, I mean, net. So even though that's all they've ever done with money, there's really no change going on. We're simply continuing to march toward more authoritarianism and more spending and more wasting of money and more destroying of the economy. I think it fits nicely into what I think is a developing depression, because the more the government gets involved, the worse the economy gets. It's just a one-on-one trade-off. But it's not really that simple, because the big driver of these changes, and my whole theory of social change, is that these waves of optimism and pessimism, or waves of social mood, are the real drivers. That's one of the reasons I was able to write Conquer the Crash, because when you follow these waves of social mood, you could see that we were peaking one out, and that we were due to roll over into a major negative mood period. This is very much like 1929 to 32. But when you had a socialist like Franklin Roosevelt, come along, he came along by pure luck at a major low. So even though he was hurting the economy with every bill he got forced through Congress, mood improved anyway. And so the stock market recovered and the economy recovered. It took a while to get out of the way because we had another correction in 1942. But you really can't necessarily blame market moves on government actions, because sometimes it goes up when you've got socialists in power and sometimes it goes down. The good news for people who don't really like that kind of politics is that they're going to get the blame this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Conquer the Crash is a brilliant piece of work, and we'd like to encourage you to purchase a copy, not only for yourselves, but for your congressmen and senators. And Robert Prechter from Elliott Wave International, thank you so very much for taking time today and providing a very informative interview for freethenation.com.
Well, you come up with great questions, so it was a total pleasure all the way.
Thank you, sir.